Welcome to Enjoy Fort Wayne. This episode is brought to you by the YLNI Farmers Market and highlights the 350 vendors that make up the #1 market in the state of Indiana.
Hey, my name is Ashley Wagner.
And what do you do, ma'am?
I manage the YLNI Farmers Market.
Yes, we kind of say that in jest. We know, everyone knows who you are. You are the only person to be on the podcast now twice. So, and what I want to do today was talk through the winter market and kind of talk through the origins, how it started, how it came to be, and then where it's at now and what we're excited about for the future. So first of all, you've been here, as you can go back to the previous episode that Ashley was on and find out that you've been here for over a decade. So we know that. We know that the winter market has not been around for a full decade, which means you were around for the birth of it. And what I'm curious to know, and a lot of our vendors and customers, I'm sure, are a little bit curious as well. What were some of the stumbling blocks? How did you get rolling with it? What was that first idea like? How did that go? Who was involved? What did you have to do in order to have the first winter market? And when was that? Is that enough right there? I know that was.
That's a lot of questions.
Yeah, you can get through it.
Let's do one at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, birth of the winter market. That's a very good, a good way to say it, I guess. So vendors had been asking us, well, let me say this. We started the first winter market in 1415. And I want to say at least...
That's right before Columbus. You know, he was in 1492, so...
Except, 2014 and 2015.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
Jeez.
Okay.
So I believe vendors had been asking us like a few years prior to that to do a winter market, but we had always wanted to give our vendors like the season off, some time off to like rebuild their product and that type of thing, and our staff and volunteers. But
yeah, to work 12 months a year, right, is kind of
I guess that's
daunting
normal
task for some people.
Yeah.
To do this. It's a side hustle for a lot of people, and it's volunteering for a lot of people. So to ask them to do that 12 months a year could be tough.
Yes. Yeah.
Fair.
But they kept after us. And then we, in working with Fort for Fitness, and at the time, their offices were out of the Ash Center over off of Taylor. I can't think of the name of the other road. The World Baseball Association is over there.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yes. So anyway, that's where their offices were, and I have been working with Fort for Fitness for a long time, and so they had kind of offered some space, like, hey, let's partner. Do you think you'd be interested in the winter market? I'm like, well, yeah, our vendors keep asking about it, and so we were able to get all of that together, like the behind-the-scenes type stuff, I guess, if you will. And then we started advertising it to vendors, and, I want to say that we had at least 30 vendors every Saturday, and we did that.
That right off the bat, you're saying?
Yeah. So that was probably like in October through April type thing.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look, but I would assume we did it right from the beginning, October through April.
And where was it located?
So it was at the Ash Center, which is the World Baseball Academy, over there off of Freeman. That's the name, Freeman, and I think it intersects with Taylor.
So I don't know if I technically, as a customer, ever made it to that one. I'm trying, and that's why I feel like it's in the like lost archives of the market, is this location.
Yeah, it was like their gym that they had over there, and so obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, but at that point, maybe we could have been better on social media and kind of getting the word out. But in our infancy, that's just kind of what it was. And also, if we had been able to grow there, obviously, like I think more people would have known about it. but that space was leased out to somebody else, and so we were unable to go back for a second year. So on this location that we went to at that point was Wagner. There was some connections between the YLNI board and the owner.
Okay.
And so Wagner is an old Mexican restaurant that's over on Fairfield. I think it was like Casas. I don't know. The type and name of the restaurant's not important. But the layout, it was like an old restaurant. And so, again, I'm presuming that was like in October through April type thing.
Yeah.
The other thing to notate that I did not mention is that we only did this every other Saturday because we did not want to compete with Fort Wayne Farmers Market at the time, who was also at that time every other Saturday.
Oh, so you went off, you guys staggered. Mm-hmm. That way the community could go every weekend if they wanted, and right. You could choose.
And our vendors didn't have to choose. They could
do
also
both if they wanted.
Yes.
Wow, what an interesting concept. I didn't know that either. Mm-hmm. I do remember going to a market at the Tin Cap Stadium, and I didn't know that it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
As most people don't know that.
Right.
And that's fair because you don't really pay attention. But yeah, definitely now as doing this, I know the market is not, our winter market is not at the Tin Cap Stadium. So couldn't be at the Ash Center then, mm-hmm. going into 2015/2016. Mm-hmm. And so what was the thought then?
Well, vendors wanted us to keep going, so we went into Wagner. And great owner, great guy, great location, just not the right location for a market. Mm. And also our vendors didn't think it was great. Again, in my thinking, like, it takes time to grow something, so we could have made it great if that was our only option.
Sure.
But instead, we just kind of kiboshed it. We didn't have great vendor attendance or customer attendance. Again, it could have gotten better if we would have built it, but we just kind of put a stop to it at that point. But vendors kept after us. And so I kept looking for space, and it's just hard to find a big open space downtown Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
And so
even now, even worse. I mean,
right.
few and far between. It's just.
And so in, what was that, probably 18, 19, I had seen that Aunt Millie's was up for lease. I don't think I called right away. I probably gave it like a few months or something, and then I had called them, and they weren't super keen on the idea of like just Saturdays.
Right. 4 times, there's 30 days in a month, and you're only going to use it.
They wanted to just kind of like rent the space and be done with it.
Yeah.
And so I think I probably called them again like a year later, with the support of some vendors that had been trying to get us into that location as well. And
they caved.
Well, I think we had just said to them, like, okay, this has been sitting here. You're not renting it. Like, you might as well bring in something rather than nothing. And so they really, I want to say, partnered with us because we had a very different type of lease. We weren't charged the regular lease. We had a different kind of lease, which was super helpful as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So we were finally able to get in there. That would have been in 2020, I think. But 18-19 is when I first kind of made contact with them and started talking to them. So 2020, the year of COVID.
COVID.
I don't even want to. The aspect of COVID just. Anyway, so we got in there in 20, and we knew from the beginning that we wouldn't be there super long because of the plans that they had for it. So we were there for 2 seasons. 2021 and 21-22.
Right. And overall, it went pretty well. I mean, as far as size and...
Yeah, we still had about 20,000 square foot. I want to say 50 vendors kind of jumped on board with us and helped us. They were there at day one. And then... come around the holidays. I think that first year we were not sold out, but by year 2, our average was more like 60 into the low 70s each Saturday. And at that holiday season, we were sold out. Like I had every inch of that place. Like there were no more booths that I could sell.
Yeah.
And so that helped us gain momentum into trying to find our next location. And one thing I loved about Aunt Millie's is the history. We had so many vendors and customers come up to us like, oh, I remember being here, working here. Like this was my spot. And, just, it's so cool to hear that history. Even the same thing when we're down at Bar Street in the summer, like, oh, my grandparents, great grandparents. And so it's just really cool to hear those kind of stories.
When you say the amount of vendors, it's still remarkable to me. The average market in the summer to get those numbers would be very impressive. And in the winter, it's considerably lower. And to have that number, even from the very, very beginning, you said you had at least 30. I mean, you had to know, like, okay, we have something here from the beginning, right? Or were you more of like, well, we'll see how this goes? Did you think having that many right away wasn't that big a deal?
I don't know that I really had thoughts like that. I was just like, there were a few Saturdays where attendance was not great, like when we were at Aunt Millie's and our first Saturday in January. I think we had like 12 vendors. 12. Something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But we're all still excited to be there, and we all shopped from each other, and I think customer attendance was like 300. So, like...
pretty low.
I remember having that amount of customers and vendors in the summer, like 10 years ago, so, but I know it takes time to grow, like what I just said about the summer market, that took years for us to get where we are today.
Yeah.
And so I think as long as we can stay established and our vendors, our vendors make the market. We need the vendors. As long as the vendors are happy and they want to be there, then they're the ones who bring in the customers.
Right. And they're the best volunteers, too, willing to come early and do XYZ or stay later and take care of it. And even on off days, come help paint or do this. We have vendors that will do that. That's part of it, too. So then let's go through to the present where we're at now on 1501 East Barry, which is cool that it's really literally just down from the summer market on Barry, and you just go down that one way, and well, you have to take Wayne, I guess, if you're coming from the summer market, and then shift over to the old bun factory, the old bun building, the old East End. We could go on and give all the names.
Factory,
that right. So it's where Summit City Brew Works is located, probably the most known business in that building. So when did you first even find out that it was an option?
Actually, it was kind of in the running when we were trying to get into Aunt Millie's, but I was just so concerned about parking. And so when Aunt Millie's, when they were still kind of thinking, we went over there and looked. And then when Aunt Millie's said, okay, yep, we'll make this work, then we were on board Aunt Millie's.
Just didn't worry about anything else, yeah.
And so when we knew we couldn't be there anymore, it's just kind of like back to the drawing board. And then I was like, oh, we looked at that space. We could go try it. Like I totally had forgotten about it. And I actually called the owner of the building looking at another piece of his property. And he told me about that one. I was like, oh, yeah, like I've actually talked to you before. Like I remember looking through this space. And he agreed to kind of fix up the parking lot. And then we were able to work with, I always get them confused. Indiana Tech? Yeah, Indiana Tech is right there on Washington.
Yep.
And then we were able to work with Brewhound and get like a shuttle going, so we had extra parking
for that first year for parking. Yeah, that way it wasn't an issue. Right. And then people parked on the grass lot, and it worked out. I mean, because a lot of people came. The average, because I'm trying to think back, what was the average amount of vendors now moved into the location on East Berry?
We were in the high 60s, low 70s.
I mean, that's crazy, to think just a few years ago for the summer, that was the amount of vendors. And now the summer is way beyond that. And we opened the season this past year with more than 70. Wasn't it a little bit more?
Yeah, we were probably about 80.
And in the months like January and February, we get that it's a little bit less. It's just so cold, other stuff going on, and there's less vendors. But still, when you think about how many vendors are still there week in and week out compared to other markets, it really is incredible. I love talking to people in these little bit slower months. You can kind of have conversations with people, and the ones who are there for the first time are blown away by the winter market. And when I tell them this is actually the lowest that it will be, like in this time frame that you're coming will be the lowest attended, it'll have the least amount of vendors, and they are blown away. And they haven't even been in the back room yet where a lot of the food vendors are.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, have you been in the back room yet? And they're like, there's a back room.
Yeah.
I mean, it still blows away people, whereas people who are there week in and week out, like the two of us, we may have conversations saying, oh, yeah, it's pretty low today, huh? But sometimes it's good to have perspective because, and that's one thing I wanted to mention, I haven't told you this, but because I do talk to people all the time in the time frames that we're talking about where it's like little less attended, and they're still blown away. So that perspective, I think, is good to know that, hey, even when we would say we're kind of low, it's still like blows out of the water other markets in other states, even in our own state. Like, it's pretty incredible. And I'm excited because when you see that growth and to know that you had a hand in it, and you obviously have the biggest hand in it, is really cool to see. What is something that you're excited about moving forward? I know we've done events and things in the past, but what is your vision for the winter? Obviously, it's not going away. It's like a well-oiled machine at this point where it's going to keep going. But what are you excited for moving forward?
Well, I did want to add something to that before I answer your question.
We'll allow it.
Thank you. Even when it starts slow and you're like, man, and then I just feel bad for the vendors. Like, man, it's just going to be kind of slow today.
You want them to make money.
But then like all of a sudden it just gets kind of busy. And maybe not even super busy. But then, the vendors, I always say this is a community. Like when you join the market as a vendor, you're not just participating in a market, you're joining a community. And our community really shines. This is one of the times that they really shine, is that when it's not busy, like they're shopping each other. And, that's when you know that it's a community, that it's a family, like they're there to help each other. And so I always feel really excited about that. Even though like, oh, it's going to be a slow day. And then like, not that your customers come through, but your vendor base comes through and they just shop each other. And I think that just makes the day that much better.
For sure.
Okay, future of the winter market. Yes, I don't think it's going away. And with the growth of downtown, more apartment buildings and more living space downtown, I think the market's definitely going to be needed, especially with just, it feels like today so many people are wanting to shop local. I mean, don't get me wrong, people still love Target. That's good and great and fine.
For sure.
But
that's not going away either.
Right. But more and more more people are wanting to shop local, that they're wanting to, shop from their family and friends and support.
They take pride in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just excited to continue the legacy of the winter market and in the history. The building that we're in right now, as you were saying, it has multiple names because it has history. So again, that's what I love about this space is we've had vendors like, oh yeah, my grandparent used to bring me this candy, and
Right,
where
the
can I find this
bun.
candy? I remember eating it when I was little. Well, they don't make it here, but you can get it usually from these locations.
Yeah. We gave some out, I remember.
Yeah, our opening day 2 years ago. Yes, one
That
of
was
our
pretty cool.
vendors found some, and then they were giving them out. I don't know, to the first 100 customers, something like that.
Yeah. That was cool.
So it's things like that. So we're just excited to continue the winter market, and we'll always continue to come up with ideas to keep customers coming in during those slow months. We had that 40-foot whale come in, but man, it was like 0 degrees that day. But they were predicting some pretty bad conditions, but we still had 50 vendors, I think, show up, and we still had a good customer count that day.
Yeah.
And then we had the our JVG event, junior vendor jamboree. So we invited little kids that have businesses to come vend with us for the day.
Yep.
And that was
cool.
super cool. So we're always going to be thinking of things to do outside the box to keep people coming in to help keep our vendors happy, to get them paid.
Awesome. So, yeah, bottom line is it's really cool that every single Saturday from 9 to 1, half the time we're outside where we just close off a couple city blocks and just take over. And then the other half, we're in a building that has a lot of history, multiple rooms, tons of vendors, tons of food, still the same smiling faces, indoors. So every single Saturday, you can come to us from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and know that a lot of the same vendors will be there, the food, all that, no matter the weather. We've closed less than 5 times due to the weather in, 5 years? We've closed less than 5 times, would you say?
Collectively, like counting both summer market and winter market?
Yeah. Is it about that?
I believe
the number
it's
is small.
3 or 4.
Yeah. So less than
3.
5 in 5 years have we absolutely shut down because either there was like an emergency for the road, like you couldn't be on the road, or the temperatures were simply just too cold for our vendors to get out there and move their product back and forth.
Well, 5 years seems like not that long. It's less than 5 in the 13 years I've been doing this.
There you go. So the market has been closed less than 5 times in 13 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
The vendors are there for their customers.
Yeah,
like they're going to be there
incredible.
rain or shine, and we're going to be there for our vendors rain or shine. So that's why we don't cancel often, because as long as we're open, then it's up to the vendors if they want to be there or not. And customers still come.
Right.
I mean, last year when we didn't even cancel, I think we just postponed. We postponed setup, but then it just kept raining, and it was raining, and we had that really bad thunder and lightning. Anyway, so we did have to close that day, and that was the second time.
Yeah.
Once in the winter, 3 times. That's the official count. 3 times.
Yeah.
But anyway, when many vendors had still set up. I bet we still had 80 vendors set up that day last summer, and customers were still there. I mean, we probably still had a couple hundred people there, even while we were trying to help vendors tear down and get out of there before the next storm came in. There's still people shopping, trying to get their produce, whatever. But
yeah. No, that's great. That's when you built up a community that people want to come, no matter if it's raining cats and dogs or it's colder than 0 degrees. People still want to be there. So sometimes for safety reasons and stuff, we will close based on the roads, based on that. But basically, bottom line is still very cool to say every Saturday from 9 to 1, you can catch us at the YLNI Farmers Market. Thank you to Ashley for joining us for the second time, and we will see you at the Farmers Market this Saturday. This podcast is brought to you by Coraggio Media. The show is edited by me and sponsored by the YLNI Farmers Market. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest updates. We will see you next week, where we will be sure to show you how you can enjoy Fort Wayne.